Hey guys, before we get into the tour today that I already finished filming for you, I absolutely have to show you something that I discovered as I was going through and doing some harvesting. Look at that. You know what that is? That's a shiitake mushroom. Look at that. There's more along the back. Look at that. Oh, that's so exciting. I really didn't think I was going to get anything. And now they're here. And it's been dry for I don't even know how long. It's not like I did anything special for them to get them to fruit. They just decided they could start fruiting now. Obviously, I did not catch them fresh. They're not that old. Something's nibbled on it, but I might still cut them and see if I can at least dry them and use them for stock, but I might also fry up a little bit and see if it's any good as it is. But oh my gosh. Okay, now you can watch the tour. So last week we saw that the frost had just hit the garden. It was a very minor frost. A lot of stuff died, but also quite a bit of it survived. And now that it has warmed up and it doesn't feel like it's probably gonna frost for a while, although apparently you never can tell, I think this far post-frost it is easier to tell what died and what didn't, and then actually also see some of the recovery of the plants that actually did not die. So this week I'm gonna kind of focus in on some of the damage and also some of the stuff that is still doing absolutely fine. I would have to say that I don't necessarily recommend doing things the way that I've done them this year. I definitely think that I should have started clearing a lot of these 2 rows out and replanting stuff for fall. I fall into this trap every single year where it's but there's so much produce out here, it is almost done. I just need to wait a little bit longer and then I will get it. And to a certain extent, I am correct. And to a certain extent, I am also being inefficient because this area, while it might produce a little bit for me, would be working way harder producing stuff that would grow well into the fall and winter here in sunny, warm South Carolina. And so now I have a couple of rows of half dead or entirely dead plants and very few, if any, fall crops coming up in their place. And I know it's so hard to make the call of sacrificing something that is definitely not dead but definitely on the way out to make room for something new. And I've been trying to work on the correct balance of that over the years, and every year I'm I will be more cutthroat and I will get it out of there and make room, and then every year I find that I just don't have it in my heart to do it. So we might be stuck with an inefficient garden. We'll have to see. The tomato row, more than anything, is mostly dead. I am getting very few harvests out of here. I am still getting some of these dried bean pods off of here, and also, surprisingly, a tomato or 2. But by and large, there's not a lot going on down here. And I had tried planting some fava beans. Sometimes I'll notice there's 1 or 2 sprouting up. I wish I had a lot more. And I think if I had torn down everything, it would have been a lot easier for me to see whether or not they were sprouting and actually replant when I noticed that they weren't. However, I do still fully believe in this what would you call it? Transition planting kind of idea where you plant something else to come up before the other thing has truly finished up. I think it's very efficient. I think I just did not follow through on what I meant to do. And that is the gardener's fault. That is my fault. That is not the method's fault exactly. I just need to work on getting the system to work for me and figure out what stopped me from doing what I wanted to do and focus in on fixing that. You can see now just how dead the basil is. I'm surprised that the stems are still green, but I mean, all the leaves are just decimated by that frost. So thankfully, because I do live in such a mild winter place, if I tear out the tomatoes this week and plant more fava beans, I will probably still have time to get a harvest. It might not be a fall-winter harvest, but it might be a spring harvest, which I've done in the past. And that'll be something. It won't be as efficient, but I still have time to make some use out of this space. Another spot where I think it's much easier to see the difference in the frost damage is on this eggplant. You can see some leaves with the very obvious browning at the tips, and then obviously the healthy leaves that did not get the frost damage. And this plant generally, even though it definitely has some damage on it, generally seems fine. It's actually, if you look close, even making some more fruit for me. This one actually is getting quite close to done. Should probably pull that today. We can also look at the zinnias and see that while there's a lot of brown here, you can still pick out all the colored blooms that absolutely did not die in the frost. Similar over here, lots of brown but colored pops coming up everywhere. Check in on the path lettuce that is right here. Here's one all the way out in the middle of the path, and then kind of the rest of it congregated along the edge where that lettuce kind of fell over and dropped all of its seeds. You can see we've got many baby lettuces over here. I haven't thinned them or touched them at all. I'm just gonna kind of let them do their thing and hope for the best. A lot of times, things that sprout on their own are incredibly strong, especially compared to their counterparts that we baby. Look at that. Still got lots of green peppers around out here. Once you start looking, you'll see quite a few. And that is one of the things I am hoping for. I'm hoping to get more ripe peppers, because especially once they get to this size where you know, okay, it's about to start turning soon, then you have a reasonable expectation that you might be able to get it to ripen. If it was still small and growing, I would say definitely no time at all. But this gives me hope. And also, just in case nobody has ever told you, with sweet peppers, they all start green and then they ripen to red. So a green bell pepper that you buy at the store is just an unripe red or orange or yellow, whatever it is, bell pepper. So even if I harvest at this stage, it is not the red pepper that I really wanted, but there's also plenty of things to do with green peppers. Oh, look, the panther approaches. Do you see her back there in the leaves? Kata. Oh, you are stealthy. You can see her fur peeking through. Also in this general vicinity, one of my pea plants is just finally growing up. It got really tall really fast, or either that or I just wasn't noticing it. But this is looking great. I wish I had like 30 of these, but you know, we'll take what we can get, especially since we were very hands-off with that and did not baby it up, especially after the storm too. Took out, I think it washed away a bunch of the stuff that was really little and just getting started. Also in this area, I want to talk to you guys about some new transplants that I've put in. If you look closely, you'll see this right here. I've also got some right there. You can see the little purplish tinge. This one's a Brussels sprout here. And then this bright green one next to it sprouted out of the same cup. theoretically maybe from the same seeds. Hard to tell. They look like two incredibly different plants. I just left them both because I'm curious what this is going to turn into, because that looks like the Brussels sprout that I planted. And there were multiple of these in those cups, so it like wasn't just a fluke thing that randomly got in there, unless it got in with the seed packet. Who knows? Anyway, love to find out what that's all about. More little peppers in here. Here's a red one. It's looking beautiful. Look at that color, especially the way the sun hits it. Love that. Let's see what else we've got down here to look at. If I come over to the hot peppers, we can see a few more starting to come in and ripen up. You can see some of the color coming in along here. Actually quite a bit. Last time I came through and picked everything, the only things that were left were these really unripe ones. So I am gonna get quite a few more hot peppers out of here since the freeze didn't end up killing them. It's actually kind of tough to find any frost damage on these plants at all. Like this is maybe a little bit here. I mean, I'm struggling maybe a touch here. Definitely not a ton on these plants. Her spider friend is back and in a new spot. You can see her hanging right there. Her web goes all the way out to this little zinnia. I'm going to have to destroy it as I walk through it. Sorry. This is a walking path. Okay, so I want to show you guys the lettuces and dill that are coming up here. You can see them a lot better now that they're bigger, and you can actually see a couple more. Like there's one over there. There's a lot of dills coming up. There's another little lettuce right there. Definitely not as widespread and like evenly spread out as I would like, but they're here. And there's a spinach here, spinach here. I mostly really want the spinaches because I've got that other lettuce coming up. There's a spinach there. I'm gonna also just kind of let this do as it will and see how the lazy gardening method turns out. The brassicas here at the back, they all still look really good. I definitely wish that I had larger brassicas out here by this time, but it looks like the warm weather is going to do us a few favors, and hopefully these guys will get a little bigger before it gets like truly cold on a consistent basis out here. And when I say truly cold, I mean it's South Carolina. It'll be, you know, dipping down into the 40s, maybe the 30s all winter. If it gets lower than the 30s, you know, into the 20s, that'll be even more rare. And a quick little update on some of the stuff I've got along this back row. I've got my, what is the name of that plant? I'll put it on the screen because I can't think of it off the top of my head. Lemongrass, feverfew. This actually has been enjoying the cooler weather. It had flowered and died back, and now it's bushing out again with leaves. Turmeric, definitely frost tender here. That needs to get dug up. And the lemon balm, which of course is going to be mostly fine with the cool temperatures. Might die back if it gets cold enough, but will absolutely come back for me in the spring. Hello, friend. I'm sorry about your web, but if we're going to coexist here, you're going to have to choose a better spot. Alright, and then the second half of this, which is my store-bought sweet pepper plants. They also have quite a few green peppers on them. Hoping to get some of these to ripen, but again, I can just use them as green if I need to. I'll keep an eye on when it might frost and maybe be a little bit more careful about checking the weather often because it changes so fast. And just pick all of these if it looks like it might frost. Currently this week it's not saying it'll get down below 50. And if the weather says that and then it frosts, I don't know what to do about the weather predictions, man. Blue butterfly peas are still doing great in this weather. They're actually flowering even more, it feels like. Since it's so close to frost, I started pulling flowers, which I haven't really been doing all season because I wanted seeds. But at this point, if this got pollinated and started to set a seed, it would not have time to mature. So I might as well harvest the flowers and dry them out for tea. Interesting to me is that some of the cucumber did survive the frost, which I wasn't really expecting that it would do, but it seems like it was close enough to the ground to stay warm. And I actually have a baby cucumber forming here, and it actually looks kind of nice. We'll see if it continues to look good, but I mean, this thing is still pulling through, trying really hard, and I might get one more very late cucumber out of this. Noodle beans are another thing that I should probably be cutting out, although they're not really in the way of anything. There is a couple of peas growing out here. There should be more, but even if there was like a full bunch of peas, the way that these die back to just little sticks, I don't think they get in the way of really anything at all. So, you know, peas and dead noodle beans can easily coexist on this trellis, and I can save myself some of the work of cleaning and just clean off all the vines in the spring one time instead of doing it in the spring and in the fall. Look at that. That might be the first pea I've gotten from over in this section of the garden. I bet that's going to be really sweet and tender as a pod right now. Let's try it. It might be sweeter if it was colder outside. That's okay. Tastes green. Not bad green, but green, if you know what I mean. Something else I've been harvesting recently are these little wild violet flowers. This is, I guess, technically a weed because I didn't plant it. It just grows here naturally. But these little flowers can be used similar to the blue butterfly pea flowers to make a really beautiful, I think also pH reactive colored tea. And if you look along this back row here, I actually have started noticing onions. You see the straight leaves coming out. These must be things that I planted and either were small or I never ended up getting, but they are growing out some new leaves again, so we might end up seeing some like slightly larger or split bulbs. Yeah, if I look closer you can see those two stems coming from the same spot. So this little bulb will split and make a lot of greens for me and also more onion. There's also a carpet of false wild strawberries around. They take over so fast. I try to pull them. They make these cute little red fruits, and the seeds are falling right off, but you can kind of see how the seeds are sitting on the outside of the fruit. These are not going to be tasty like a real wild strawberry would be, unfortunately. Otherwise I would just let them stay. But they're not going to be harmful to eat, but they're not very good. And you can usually tell if you've got the wild ones because the flowers will be yellow instead of white. Here's a better example of that fruit. Looks like it could be a strawberry, but those seeds, they're just not quite right. There's honestly a lot of edible weeds out here. The chickweed is coming back. Y'all might remember me talking about chickweed in the spring. This one you can identify because it will have a single row of hairs along the stem. You can kind of see that here. And then here's another wild violet flower here. The rest of the plant looks like this with these green kind of heart-shaped leaves, and all the leaves will be coming out from like one center point. And these flowers also come in like a violet shade, a purple color. You might be starting to notice why I struggle to yank out the weeds in my yard because so many of them are edible. This one here is plantain, and you can see these are its seed stalks coming up here, but the leaves, they are all coming out from the center. This is all coming out from right here, and you see these veins that go all the way from like the tip to the end of the leaf. It's one of the major ways you know that it is plantain. This is also a medicinal plant, and I'll leave you to do your own research on that, but I really enjoy using it. This one is also plantain. You can see it's still got those veins all the way, but it's much skinnier leaf, obviously. This is broadleaf plantain and narrow leaf plantain, if you can believe it. Okay, let's walk on over to the raised bed section. Mostly things are going to look about the same as they did when you saw them last week. I think we're going to see the most change here because this is where all the little babies are. Let me see if I can get my shadow out of the way for you. We've got a bunch of little babies. These are probably radishes coming up here. I also had planted some spinach in this bed, and that will probably take much longer to germinate than the radishes. And then of course all the little babies here in the middle, Brussels sprouts, cabbages, broccolis, kales, edges are kohlrabi. And these are the somewhat stunted seedlings that I definitely planted and then ignored. Should have potted up, should have planted them in bigger containers from the beginning because I really did want them to get bigger before I put them out here. We'll try and incorporate that knowledge into next year. But I did just kind of a random sprinkling, just like literally shook the seed packet out over the dirt and then kind of ruffled it in and patted it down. So you'll see, similar to some of the other stuff I've planted, definitely getting seedlings in little groups instead of perfectly spaced out. And I think it's going to be perfectly fine. You know, when you're a new gardener, you really want to make your nice, neat, straight rows. And if you've got the energy to do that, like, more power to you. But I don't. And I think that this will work just as well. We also probably are seeing a lot of growth here in this area. It's just getting greener and fluffier, and some of these leaves are huge. Like, oh my goodness, this is a rutabaga leaf. Massive, absolutely massive. And if I look over at the, let's see, this is a beet leaf right here. Also in here last week, I accidentally discovered that I have cilantro growing right there. That's a cilantro leaf next to my carrot. That's probably why I didn't notice them, because they do look a tiny bit like carrot. And this is a mess, as you can see. Definitely no straight rows, maybe a little crowded in places. But if you follow along, you'll see what I actually end up harvesting out of here. And it looks like it's gonna be pretty great. I am stoked, to be honest. I've really struggled to get rutabagas to grow for me, and I'm really hoping to be able to make some in time for Thanksgiving. Mashed rutabaga is something that my boyfriend's family has done every year, and I've always wanted it to be my rutabagas that we're eating, and they just never have turned out. But this year, I think we might do it. Well, I do have to say that there has been an increase in the raspberry harvest. The other day I harvested like a full handful of them. Still like just about enough to eat fresh, not enough to preserve, but you know, a little handful of raspberries every day is really lovely. This rosemary bush here in the middle, having a good time getting some extra sun over the fall and winter here. There's actually a beautiful praying mantis living in this rosemary bush. I've seen him a few times, and I got him on video once, so I'll go ahead and show that to you. But as far as the raspberries go, definitely got not just the fruit coming on, but also all the little flowers and baby fruits. And so as long as the frost continues to hold off, I will probably get a fair bit of raspberries from these plants this fall. Like I've been saying, probably not as much as I would have if we hadn't had such a drought, but also way more than I was expecting, given that we had a drought. I keep getting questions about when I will trim my raspberries, and the answer to that is in the spring. So with raspberries, each cane, which is these sticks, they will fruit twice. They will fruit first when they first grow up, and then they will fruit again in their second year. So this will look dead right now. I can kind of feel that it's not, because it's not snapping. It's still quite bendy. That's part of how I know it's alive. But in order to make sure, I wait until spring, and the canes that are still alive will start sprouting leaves on the sides of them. And then the ones that are dead won't. And then it'll be very easy to tell which ones to cut off. Just take some clippers and cut right above soil level, and then you're done. That's all you gotta do. You could also thin them out if you find that they are just like absolutely taking over an area. I haven't run into that yet, but I have a lot of space, so it's really up to you. The calendula over here are actually doing pretty great. I learned last year that they do pretty okay with the frost. They don't mind it until it gets super cold. But I wanted to show you guys, I've been saving seeds from these, and I just kind of wanted to show you the cycle to look for. We've got the fresh flowers, obviously, and then you'll notice that they start kind of closing up into these greenish buds here, and then as they dry out, they start to look like this. And each of these little C-shaped things, these are the seeds. They've got a little ridge on them, little bumpiness. That is a calendula seed. And I collected a bunch of them, put them in a bag, and so some of these sometimes I'll just come through and just dust them back in here or wherever I think I might want calendula, and we'll see how many volunteer calendula I get come spring. I have also been saving seeds from my marshmallow plant, and I think that the way that the seeds look is very cute. This is a bunch of seeds right here. Every little, it almost looks like a petal on a dried flower. Every single one of those is a seed. So I collected a pocket full of seeds, and then again, the rest of them, I'll just kind of grab a bunch and, put them around. We'll see what happens. I found an example of the purple version of that wild violet, by the way. This is what you're looking for. Here in the arch, we have another Joro spider that has moved, if you can see the web. Unfortunately, this is a terrible place for a web, and if I don't move you, my poor Amazon drivers are going to have a terrible, terrible time. So we're just gonna destroy as much as we can and hope that you decide that this is not a good place for you to be. You can see her right there. Oh. She's beautiful. She's doing good work, but she's got to do it somewhere else. Alright guys, that is all I've got for you today. My Discord people, if you're in the Discord group, keep an eye out for an announcement of our fourth quarter live chat. It's a little delayed because of the storm and everything, but we definitely are getting to it. And if you have never been in the Discord before, I invite you to check it out. If you go through my Patreon below, you'll see the link to join, and basically that is where everybody can come and share pictures of their garden or talk about what they're doing for the season or their harvests or what you've been cooking. That's where I share a lot of like the more day-to-day type stuff that I do. And there's a bunch of really cool gardeners in there, really cool people to chat with and bounce ideas off of, because I certainly don't know everything, especially for people who are in very different climates than me. So it's a really great place for us to all share our knowledge and start building a community. So I invite you to check that out, and also to stick around with me for next week and next week's garden tour. I hope to see you there. Happy gardening.